with a loud salawat, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوث الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نات موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا عجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته. اللهم اعف صلة سلواتك وسلامة تسليماتك على أول التعينات المبادة من العماء رباني وآخر التنزلات المضافة إلى نوع الإنسان. كان الله ولم يكن معه شيء ثاني محصي لعوالم حضرات الخاص بوجوده وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام المبين الرسول النبي المكي الخرشي التحامي صاحب لواء الحمد ومقام المحمود أبي القاسم محمد الحميد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أخيه وابن عمه وثحره وخليفته من بعده وقائد القر المحجلين ياسوب الدين إمام المتقين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى ابنته الطاهرة الحوراء العنسية الراضية المرضية الشفية يوم الجزاء فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى سبتي رحمة وسيدي شباب أهل الجنة الحسن والحسين. اللهم صل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد وحسن بن علي وحجة القائم المنتظر المهدي. اللهم صل على محمد حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك. اللهم سهل منهجهم وعجل في فرجهم وجعلنا من محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الذين لا يرجون لقاءنا لولا أنزل علينا الملائكة أو نرى ربنا لقد استكبروا في أنفسهم وعتوا عتوا كبيرا يوم يرون الملائكة لا بشرى يومئذ للمجرمين ويقولون هجرا محجورا. قدمنا إلى ما عملوا من عمل فجعلناه حباء منثورا. أصحاب الجنة يومئذ خير مستقرا وأحسن مقيلا. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
I begin in the name of Allah, most beneficent and most merciful. All praise is due to Allah, and it's an honor for all of us to be inspired by the martyrdom of Imam Hussein and to commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, because as you all are aware, he is not only the beloved of the Holy Prophet, but he is part of Ahl al-Kisa, whom the Prophet of Allah had identified as his Ahl al-Bayt, and Allah had promised that impurity would never ever come closer to them in Quran. And we as Muslims obviously have a duty, but that duty also has a purpose, and that purpose itself is to engage and inspire ourselves from this great martyrdom to act upon what we learn from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. And the topic of discussion, as you all are aware, is discovering the abode of hereafter. And if you recall my discussion yesterday, and also the video that was shown, was to show you that when Muslims talk about death, when Muslims talk about afterlife, Muslims are not talking in a sense of hopelessness as it is being projected outside in society. One of those people who are trying to incite Islamophobia in this part of the world, one of the historians, has written in one of his books on post 9/11 that all this is happening because of the frustration that Muslims have. They cannot get anything, so they are getting hopeless. Let me tell you that the teachings of Islam refrains us from any form of hopelessness, neither in this world nor in the hereafter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says one of the greatest sins you can commit after the shirk is to be hopeless. Islam motivates us to be hopeful. So what is the thing that inspires us to reflect and contemplate upon death? Because people want to shy away from death, and they say that, when it comes, we are going to deal with it. Why think about it? We have to think about it because the time that Allah has granted us in the life of this world is very limited and unknown to us. We are not even aware till when we are going to live. Now, how are we going to make this time most useful? How are we going to make our life purposeful? How are you going to make our life full of passion and goals that we want to accomplish? If we want to do that, then we need to contemplate about the ending of this life as quickly as possible and be prepared for that. And we have talked about the sense of preparedness yesterday also. And if we do, then we have truly lived a life which is full of satisfaction and contentment, because we have lived keeping in mind that tomorrow we are not going to live. And if this was only taught by people who talk about religion, and if religion was in any way considered to be backwards or backwardness, we have seen yesterday one of the most successful person in the technology sector of this century was also getting motivated by reminding himself of death. So death and its contemplation and its thinking motivates you to prepare yourself and use your time productively while you are living in the life of this world. Now, those who want to shy away, there are many causes. Today, I am going to talk about one specific cause which is specified in Surah Furqan, verses 21 to 24. قَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْنَا الْمَلَائِكَةُ أَوْ نَرَى رَبَّنَا. Those who do not expect to encounter us say, why have the angels not been sent down to us? Or why do we not see our Lord? Why are not being angels? If if Islam is truthful, if Islam is righteousness, then those who were coming to the Prophet of Allah, they were saying, if the angels were being sent to you, O Prophet of Allah, of course they did not believe him to be the Prophet of Allah, then why is our Lord not sending angels to us directly? Why only you? And then, why can't we see him? Why can't we see our Creator? Now, what is Allah saying to these people? لَقَدْ اسْتَكْبَرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ وَعَتَوْا عُتُوًّا كَبِيرًا. Allah is saying, certainly they are full of arrogance within their souls and have become terribly defiant. So, this objection and this demand is instigated or is initiated by those people who are demanding the Prophet of Allah. Why aren't the angels coming to us? Why can't we see Allah ourselves? Allah is saying, certainly they are full of arrogance within their own souls. Their souls are filled with arrogance. So the cause of this defiance, as the word says finally, that they have become terribly defiant, the cause of defiance, of encountering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which the vehicle that takes us into that direction is death, is due to the arrogance that has stemmed in their own souls. This is the arrogance. Don't we see this? Is this an objection that was only 1400 years old? Or don't we see the same objection right now? There are people who are qualified, educated, and they want to engage into a discourse and a dialogue with Muslims or people who are more religious, but their words are filled with arrogance. If it is so and so, then why can't I see? Why can't I see the angels? Why can't I see my Creator? Because you don't deserve to see. Because you have to create that worthiness to see. You do not possess that potential to see, therefore you cannot see. If somebody says, why can't the wall see? Why is the wall blind? What are you going to say to that person? Seeing is an act of animate things which have life and which have eyes or some source of seeing. A wall is inanimate. A wall cannot see. It does not possess that quality that would make it see. So your question itself is lame and very naive. You should not be even asking a question, why cannot a wall see? So just like that, the gap between Creator and the creation is almost like that, where the creation cannot see because the creation is living in the domain of matter. We are living in a material world, whereas Allah is immaterial. The domain of Allah, Allah has the reach over us, but we do not have the reach over Allah in terms of physically seeing Allah. But the verse of Holy Quran is saying, we come with these conclusions not because we want to learn, but rather it is our arrogance that tells us or that demands us to ask the Prophet of Allah that why can't we see Allah, or why do the angels descend upon us? Then the verse of Holy Quran continues. The verses begin from 21 to 24, and then here Allah is saying, يَوْمَ يَرَوْنَ الْمَلَائِكَ لَا بُشْرَى يومئذ للمجرمين ويقولون حجرا محجورا. The day when they see the angels, there will be no good news for the guilty that day, and they will say, keep off from paradise. So Allah is saying, yes, you cannot see the angels while you are living in the life of this world, but there would be a time that you would see angels. But at that time, you will not be expected to act virtuously, because the act of working, the act of action would cease from you. It will be taken away from you. Once you arrive at the juncture of death, then you will not be able to act. Now you will start seeing things, you are going to see the realities, but at that point it is not going to help you. So here it would be good if I could mention this point, that we believe in unseen. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is a book, there is no doubt. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's a guidance, a book of guidance for those who are God-fearing. But here, the verse continues and says, those who believe in the unseen. Those who believe in the unseen. But this unseen, or the belief in the unseen, does not mean that we blindly believe in the unseen. Compared to other religions, there it is blind belief in the unseen. You have to blindly believe that the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost are all three different entities, and then they are all one, as it is done in Christianity. And the belief has to be a blind belief, and it's not even logically acceptable. What is expected of us in Islam is the rational belief in unseen, not an irrational belief in unseen. Because Allah is only going to burden us with that task that which we can comprehend and analyze and accept it. Otherwise it would not be fair and just on our part to be given this duty which we cannot fulfill, because we do not have that potential. Exactly like I have given you an example of a wall. If a wall cannot see, if a wall cannot speak, a wall does not possess those ingredients that would enable it to speak or see. If it had those, obviously it would see. Please recite aloud salawat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, and the Mufassirin say here, even though they are calling, the kuffar are saying that, أَوْ نَرَى رَبَّنَا, why can't we see our Lord? Although they are calling the name with respect here, but they are merely trying to ridicule. So there are certain times you find people who are talking about religion, they are being very respectful, but also very sarcastic. And all this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, is out of their arrogance. And then Allah is saying, there would be a time when they are going to see the angels. But at that time, it is going to be too late. They are not going to be able to benefit from that seeing. And then what the angels are going to say, this last portion of the verse in which it says, Hijran mahjura yaquluna. They are going to say Hijran mahjura. The Mufassirin, the commentators of the Holy Quran, they say that this was the phrase that the Arabs would use when they want to seek shelter from something, to make something impossible. If the Arabs would end up in a fight, then the weaker person would say this word when the stronger person would draw his sword and is about to kill, especially when this is the month of, say if it was the holy months. Even the pagan Arabs used to observe the holy months, and they would not kill anybody in the holy months, And the person who is weak would say, it is impossible for you to kill me at this time. You cannot do it. But here the verse is saying that the kuffar would recognize and say it is impossible for us to go to heaven. Because this is what we have brought upon ourselves by our arrogance. So my dear brothers and sisters, arrogance is a quality that is not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person is arrogant, he will never be able to seek guidance, because his arrogance would become a wall. It would become an obstacle due to which he will never be able to go past. Because if he doesn't have any humility and if he is arrogant, that arrogance is going to drown him as the Pharaoh was drowned in Nile. Please cite aloud salawat. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَخَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ حَبَاءً مَنْصُورًا. Then we shall attend to the works that they have done and then turn them into scattered dust. Allah is saying, then we are going to look at their actions. And then we are going to throw away their actions as scattered dust. So if somebody is arrogant and perform good deeds, perform good actions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to throw away their actions because of their arrogance. Arrogance misleads a person away from the path of righteousness, from Sirat al-Mustaqim, and actions that were done, even if they were good, in the form of arrogance, are not going to lead him towards any righteousness. And we find so many arrogant dictators, so many arrogant aristocrats, so many arrogant autocrats. They might have done some good work. Even if we see those people with whom they were arrogant, when they got the opportunity, did they recognize their good works? I don't think they recognize their good works. They have not. And a recent example is the example of Gaddafi. The person who ruled there for 40 years, how humiliating it was the way he was kept. By the way, it was not, if those who are in opposition, if they prevail, that is not something they should do. Here I'm trying to say that there are some people who are saying when he was there, the gasoline was 15 cents a gallon or 15 cents a liter, and everything was so cheap, this and that. But all that comes with a quality which is called arrogance. And that arrogance did not only reside in his speech. He was arrogant to such an extent, he would eliminate anybody who would come in his way. So arrogance is a vehicle that takes us away from ubudiyah, from the servitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we are arrogant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that I am not going to account for your works. I am not going to honor your works. Your works are going to be scattered in dust. And then the final verse says, Ashabul Jannati yawma'idhin khayrun mustaqarran wa ahsanu maqila. On that day, the inhabitants of paradise will be in the best abode and an excellent resting place. So what is the target, my dear brothers and sisters, that we need to seek? We need to be amongst the Ashabul Jannah. We need to be amongst the companions or inhabitants of paradise. And if we are trying to seek the residency of paradise, it does not come with arrogance. Now, how does it trickles down in our lives? Of course, you all are mashallah, you all understand where I'm trying to lead this discussion. That the arrogance, the mere arrogance that we have even in our day-to-day transactions is only a beginning. Saddam Hussein, Lanatullah alayh, or for that matter Gaddafi or anybody else, did not become arrogant in one day. It takes step by step. It starts small and then starts progressing. So we need to be watchful while we are trying to attain virtuous qualities within us. We have to also be aware of what are those qualities that could lead us or that could deviate us from the path of Sirat al-Mustaqim. One of them is arrogance. And if we are arrogant, then even our good actions are not going to be counted. What do? We do good works, but then we are arrogant. I have seen so many places, even, establishment of Islamic centers. I've been to Tabligh, and there are some people, when I meet them and they say, you know what? I built this center. Or when I came here, nobody was here, so I am the one who has established Islam in this part of the world. I hope they are not saying this with arrogance. If it is with arrogance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that I am going to throw away and scatter away their works. So we need to be watchful. This was mere arrogance of words. We go, and as I'm addressing my young brothers here, we do a lot of good things, but then we are arrogant. We try to help our parents in our homes, but then we are arrogant. That would completely ruin the good action that we have done. So while we are doing a good action, what happens is shaitan becomes disappointed. And now he has to turn you around. And one of the biggest weapons that shaitan has is to inject you with arrogance. The moment we have arrogance, we will go about and neutralize everything that we have done by just one sentence or by just one word. So we need to be watchful. And we need to be from amongst those who are Ashabul Jannah. Please say aloud, Salawat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in other places in Holy Quran, وَمَا أُوتِيهُمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, and you have not been given the knowledge but little. We have knowledge, but our knowledge is little. And therefore, since we do not have even clear-cut knowledge of our own selves, what are we as human beings? How can we even try to start understanding or have the knowledge of our Creator Himself? So Allah has given us knowledge, but this is a foundation. But we need to build from this knowledge. If we build from this knowledge, Allah guarantees that He is going to grant us knowledge from the sources that are not seen, from the sources that are not known to us. Because Allah has channels that we do not have access to those channels. For example, if we are using internet, some of us, we know there is a certain port upon which you can communicate with the protocol that takes us back and forth on internet websites. It's probably 8080, port 8080. So there is a specific channel. If that channel is opened up by the system administrator, you can go on the internet. Otherwise, the network would be there, but you cannot go on the internet. You are restricted, and that's what firewalls are called. Firewalls are those things that restrict people from what the company or what the institution does not want you to go out and reach. Okay, but if that channel is open, you have unlimited access. Just like that, we as human beings have humongous potential, humongous capacity, and limited means of communication. The only thing is, if we work towards that direction, those channels of communication would be opened by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the criteria with which I am going to judge you or gauge you is not your wealth, is not your color of the skin, is not what you are in the life of this world, but for taqwa, but for your God-wariness, but for your God consciousness. If the more awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we have, the more channels of communication starts opening up. Let me give you an example. If you recite aloud salawat, I'll give it to you. Allama Tabatabai, a great scholar of our century, the writer of Tafsir al-Mizan, and almost every marja who is out there, except for a few exceptions, takes pride in being the student of Allama Tabatabai. He narrates to one of his students how the channels of communication starts opening up if you purify yourself. If you seek purification, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts making you see things which are unseen to other people. In Mehr Taban, a book called Mehr Taban, is a book that was written by Allama Tehrani, who is the student of Allama Tabatabai, and Allama Tehrani writes about the life of his teacher, who is Allama Tabatabai. And there, Allama Tehrani says that what his teacher had told him, while he was in Masjid Kufa, and he was sitting and he was doing zikr. He was doing zikr of Allah, he was remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was sitting, and then next moment he sees an angel descending from his right, who was amazingly beautiful. Cannot be even imagined how beautiful that angel was. So Allama Tabatabai looks at her for the first moment, and then suddenly the words of his teacher are reminded to him in his mind or in his heart. Immediately the word of his teacher, Agha Khazi, the teacher of Allama Tabatabai, comes to him that you should not pay attention to anybody but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing short of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the compensation of man. If he wants compensation, it's not angel, it's Allah himself. And then the moment Allama Tabatabai realizes that, he turns away from his right side. Then the angel comes towards the left side. And now she is coming from the left side and trying to communicate with Allama Tabatabai, and Allama Tabatabai says, no, I am not going to communicate with you. Because if anybody I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. His liqa, his encounter, nothing short of that. And then finally, the angel leaves with disappointment. What I am trying to say, my dear brothers and sisters, that if we have purified ourselves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees us that He is going to make us see things which are unseen to other people. That's why you find there are so many people who have seen things which normal people have not seen. Another good example is of near-death experience. People who have gone through near-death experience, it has completely changed their lives. The kind of things, regardless of their faith or regardless of their religion, they have seen things when they came so close to death that now their life is not the same. Meaning they have become very religious, they have started preparing for death. So if we strive towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up those channels of knowledge through which we can communicate with Allah. Please say out salawat. Another cause of this arrogance, why arrogance comes itself. Quran says, فَذَلُّوا وَأَذَلُّوا عَنْ سَوَاءِ السَّبِيلِ. So they have gone astray, therefore they shall not be able to find a way. They are already deviated and they are not going to find a way. And one of the reasons of this deviation is arrogance. And arrogance has its manifestation in self-divinity, in self-righteousness. A person thinks that he has done enough of good things that he should not only be praised by himself, but he should be also praised by other people. There is one arrogance which is completely open and which is completely apparent, which is completely seen from the speech. But there is another kind of arrogance which a person inflicts upon himself, which is called mukhaddas ma'abi. Feeling yourself to be the holiest and the saintly person out there, and therefore you deserve this and you deserve this and you deserve that. And this is also a cause of arrogance, and this arrogance also makes a person blind. If we are working towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to refrain from this kind of arrogance. Then in another verse of Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the justification why you cannot see the angels. Why can't you see the angels? Because you are human beings. I have sent a messenger from amongst you, so that you would not say he was a supernatural being and what he did we cannot do, because we belong to one category and he belongs to another category. The Prophet of Allah is an exemplar. The Prophet of Allah is uswa for us. The Prophet of Allah is the mentor for us. And if we are going to look at the Holy Prophet and act upon what the Prophet of Allah had taught us, he has to be a human being. And Quran is giving a reason. And Quran says, وَلَوْ جَعَلْنَاهُ مَلَكًا لَجَعَلْنَاهُ رَجُلًا وَلَلْبَسْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مَا يَلْبِسُونَ. And had we made him an angel, we would have surely made him a man, and we would have... Here the verse of Quran is saying that if they were angels walking upon earth, the Prophet would have been an angel. Since human beings are walking upon earth, human being was sent as a prophet, and it could not be an angel because of that. For the shortage of time, I'm trying to just shorten my speech to get you the gist of what's being said. So this demand is purely arrogance, to demand. But how about reason? Yes, reason, you have to have reason. When you believe in unseen, you believe in unseen on the basis of what is seen by us. For example, if you see the smoke, don't you know there is a fire behind it? Do you really have to see the fire to be sure that there was a fire, or merely the smoke, the effect would show you that there is a cause behind it? We all believe in this. And yet, if we decline and say, why can't I see the angel? That is coming merely out of our arrogance. I've been giving this example lately to my students in the school I'm teaching, that what about if you see an iPhone 4 in the middle of a jungle, and somebody picks up your iPhone 4 and says, wow, this iPhone 4 is in the jungle, maybe it just grew on its own over here. Even a very young person would say, you don't know, iPhone 4 was made by Apple, right? So everybody knows its creator. And nobody has to actually have a proof, because it would be very naive for you to think that it just grew from a stone there or a rock which was over there. And that's what we do. That's what we do when we see the effect and do not believe in the cause. And we think the cause has come on its own. And if this is what progressive thinking is, then this is a very backward thinking. When it comes to religion, people who do not believe, these are the arguments they present when they don't want to believe. So we need to be aware of that. Please recite aloud, Salwan. There are other verses of Holy Quran, also Surah Isra, in which from verse 92 to 96, it says, or until you cause the sky to fall in fragments upon us, just as you would think, or until you bring Allah and angels right in front of us. We are not going to believe until the sky falls upon us, or you bring Allah right in front of us, or until you have a house of gold, or you ascend into the sky, and we will not believe your ascension until you bring down for us a book that we may read. These are the demands of all those who are arrogant. These are not reasonable demands. These are the demands of arrogance. And then Allah says, say, immaculate is my Lord. Am I anything but a human? An apostle. The Prophet of Allah is reinforcing and reaffirming his humanity to show that yes, if I have to be an exemplar, if I have to be a source of emulation for mankind, then Allah has to make me a human being. And that's why I am here in the form of a human being. So those of us who think that they were the imams and they were the prophets and they can only do and we cannot do anything, we are belittling the verses of Holy Quran, which would lead us towards arrogance. We need to strive. Yes, we cannot do sujood and ruku like the Prophet of Allah. But if it stops you from getting into that path, then we have truly became a fodder for arrogance. We would become arrogant. Or this arrogance is in a sense where you cannot do. You are showing that you do not possess that quality, as I was mentioning about the wall that I have given you an example. Now, this arrogance as it exists in this time also existed during the time of the Holy Prophet, and the verses are saying this. And this arrogance flourished after the death of the Holy Prophet. In fact, it started to flourish. Rather than going down, it started to flourish. After the death of the Holy Prophet, the Baitul Mal that was given in the past was shared equally. And that was one of the causes of enmity from Amirul Mu'mineen. A companion of the Holy Prophet comes and he says he is being given a share of Baitul Mal, and then there is a black slave who just accepted Islam, and Amirul Mu'mineen gives him the equal share. And he says, "Oh Ali, you are giving me the same share as you are giving to this slave who just became a Muslim? My honor, my dignity." And Amirul Mu'mineen would say, haven't you seen what the Prophet of Allah had done? So what had happened after the death of the Holy Prophet? There was discrimination. In the Ummah, there was favoritism. And that favoritism took to its peak during the time of Bani Umayyah. When Bani Umayyah came into power, they came into power by paying off people. And how Bani Umayyah themselves came into power? They themselves came into power by the promise that was given to them before Syria was taken by Muslims. They were guaranteed that if you go and fight, then Syria is yours. If you go and fight, Egypt is yours. This is how the rulership of these states was handed over to these people. And once they got into their positions, they started holding off to it. Before Muawiyah became the governor of Syria, his brother Yazid was the governor of Syria. And when Yazid died, Abu Sufyan did not care about the death of his son. He was more concerned about the rulership. Who's going to be the next ruler? And he ensured that Muawiyah is installed in the place of Yazid, his son. And this is how Muawiyah came into the power. And once he got into the power, this power became a source of arrogance. Messages came across all the way from Syria to Medina through the sources of the companions of the Holy Prophet. Abu Zar Ghaffari was there. He saw what was being done. and he started opposing what Muawiyah was doing. The glamour and the power and the display of rulership that was being displayed by Muawiyah was completely protested by Abu Dharr al-Ghafari. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari was sent from Sham. He comes to Medina. He complains to the Khalifa. And what does the Khalifa do? He kicks him out of Medina. Nobody would dare to go and see Abu Dharr al-Ghafari seeing off. Except for Amirul Mu'mineen, nobody even had Abu Dharr al-Ghafari sent off. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari was a very close companion of the Holy Prophet. How was this happening under the watch of those people who had seen the Prophet, how the kind of life he had led? So the power started from there, and the thirst for power that Bani Umayyah had, they started and they ensured that whatever it takes to be in power, they were willing to do that. They started paying off people. That's why you see that there are sayings which say that the food on the table of Muawiyah is very tasty, and the salat behind Amirul Mu'mineen is very spiritual. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala. So Muslims were checking out. When they want to pray, they would come and pray behind Amirul Mu'mineen, and when they want to eat, they would go to the table of Muawiyah. This is how Bani Umayyah came into power, my dear brothers and sisters. And this power started corrupting and eroding the fundamental Islamic values to such an extent that there was a time when the grandson of the Holy Prophet himself was killed. Even before this, when Amirul Mu'mineen was martyred, people in Sham were saying, how was the son-in-law of the Holy Prophet martyred? And they said that he was in the mosque and an enemy of Islam had stricken him. They said, oh, so Ali used to pray Salat? They were questioning whether Ali used to pray Salat. This was the power of propaganda that Bani Umayyah had done. It would be unfair if I not take the name of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who was in the line of Bani Umayyah, but he was the one who stopped the cursing of Amirul Mu'mineen after 70 years of cursing of Amirul Mu'mineen from the mimbar of Jummah everywhere in the Islamic world. This is how Bani Umayyah had distorted Islam. There is no room for them to claim anything but hypocrisy upon which they were riding. And when it came to Sayyid al-Shuhada, at the point when the time came when Yazid became open enemy of Islam and he was seeking the allegiance of Imam Hussein, it was impossible for Imam Hussein to pay allegiance. That's why Imam Hussein said, a person like me would never do bay'ah of person like Yazid. It would never be possible. But Imam Hussein also wanted to ensure that his martyrdom would not go waste, because there were plots in which Bani Umayyah wanted to assassinate Imam Hussein. Whether he was in Medina, they would have done it. Whether he was in Mecca, they would have done it. So Imam Hussein brought the enemies of Islam into the plains of Karbala, which was completely separate. There was no room to hide, to show that there was only one enemy of Islam, which was Bani Umayyah and the family of Abu Sufyan. And that's how Imam Hussein was able to expose the hypocrisy of Bani Umayyah. And for this reason, Imam Hussein sends his companion, his beloved brother, one of his beloved companions, one of his beloved confidants, Muslim ibn Aqil, to ensure that those who are calling him, those who are inviting him, truly are seeking guidance from the Imam. And when Muslim ibn Aqil comes, he does find that there was some sense of sincerity. But what happens? Even before Muslim comes, when the news gets to Sham, Yazid appoints Ibn Ziyad as the governor. Now Ibn Ziyad wants to enter into the city of Kufa. How does he enter? He knows that the past governor, Nu'man bin Bashir, was a weak governor, and now if I go and if I expose who I am, I might not be able to get to the palace. So he covers himself up and he wears an amama like that of the Prophet of Allah and acts as if Imam Hussein is entering into the city of Kufa. And the moment people realize that it is Imam Hussein coming, they start thronging into the streets and chanting and praising the grandson of the Holy Prophet. And with this, pomp and with this glory, Ibn Ziyad gets to the palace, and then the moment he gets into the palace and the safe area, then he exposes himself and then starts threatening people of death and of persecution if they would let Hussein come into Kufa. And from then onwards, there was systematic assassination of everybody who was there, who was a follower of Imam Hussein. And we find Muslim ibn Aqil is in the same city, and now, along with Ibn Ziyad, there was another person from Basra, Sharik, who was closer to becoming a Shia. He was not 100% a Shia, but he was closer to becoming a Shia. He tries to delay the coming of Ibn Ziyad first from Basra. But when Ibn Ziyad doesn't do that, he follows him into Kufa. And when he is in Kufa, he meets Hani ibn Urwa, one of the companions of Imam Hussein, who were the people who were leading this revolution. And in the house of Hani he is staying, and then Sharik says that I am going to invite Ibn Ziyad because he is friends with me, and oh Muslim, you are here, make sure when Ibn Ziyad comes into the house to see me as I am going to act as if I am sick, you assassinate him, you kill him. Sharik invites Ibn Ziyad. Hani ibn Urwa is also not agreeable because Hani is fearful for his own life. Ibn Ziyad comes in to see, and then Sharik keeps giving the signal, so Muslim ibn Aqil would assassinate Ibn Ziyad, and that would have been the end of everything. And the most, closest person to Bani Umayyah would have been eliminated, and things would have been different. History would have been different. Muslim had the opportunity to change history by killing one person with deception. What does Muslim do? He does not kill. Sharik gets very upset. Why didn't you do it? You had the opportunity. He says, this is not what the Prophet of Allah has taught. I cannot deceive into somebody and kill him. These are not the teachings of Islam. My dear brothers and sisters, see how Imam Hussein and his companions are withholding the ground and not becoming the slaves of this dunya by trying to get into power through deception and through wrongful means. If you recall my discussion about not being the slaves of this dunya, see, Muslim is not going to deceive even for the sake of goodness. This is withholding the path of righteousness. Eventually, Ibn Ziyad comes to know about it. Hani is arrested. Hani is taken into jail, and Muslim had to leave the house, and he has no place to go. The same place where thousands and thousands of people had done the bay'ah of Imam Hussein on the hands of Muslim ibn Aqil, there is nobody now to support him. And then when he is lost into the streets of Kufa, he gets to a point where he takes some rest with the wall. The person who was living there, a woman who was living there, she was the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. And she thinks that this is a traveler, and she does not know that this is Muslim ibn Aqil. She thinks he's a traveler, and she offers him some water. And then when she realizes that this is Muslim and he has no place to go, she offers him to come inside to take shelter from the enemies and from the army of Ibn Ziyad, which Muslim does. But before it is too late, already the army of Ibn Ziyad is known, and they start surrendering the house of this woman. Now see the character of Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim ibn Aqil says, "Oh lady, I thank you very much for all your favor, but I am going to leave the house." When she asks him, why are you leaving? Stay in the house, at least there is a chance you might be saved. He says, "No, I cannot ruin your dignity and your honor for the sake of my life. I am going to go out and confront the enemy." And this is how Muslim ibn Aqil comes out and confronts the enemy. And there is one person called Muhammad ibn Ashas. I'm definitely going to talk more about his father, who was the greatest enemy of Ahl al-Bayt, Ashas. Muhammad ibn Ashas gives guarantees of shelter and deceives Muslim ibn Aqil into arrest. And when Muslim ibn Aqil is taken to the court of Ibn Ziyad, obviously Muslim ibn Aqil is not going to respect the way Ibn Ziyad wanted Muslim ibn Aqil to submit. He does not submit, and he is taken on the top floor of the palace, and he is beheaded over there, and his body is thrown on the ground. And then the body of Hazrat Muslim is dragged into the streets of Kufa. And my dear brothers and sisters, the news of the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil reaches Imam Hussein. Also there was a companion and a messenger of Imam Hussein, Mushar, Qais ibn Musahar. He is also sent and he is also caught. And when he is told to go and curse Imam Hussein from the top of the minbar, he goes and invites people to go and aid Imam Hussein and help Imam Hussein against Ibn Ziyad, and his head is also immediately cut off right then, and he's thrown on the ground, and his body is also drawn into the streets of Kufa. When this news comes to Imam Hussein recites the verse of Holy Quran which says that there are those who have fulfilled the covenant that they have given to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then there are those who are waiting to fulfill the covenant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are surely going to fulfill the covenant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that Imam Hussein is going to withhold the ground and he is going to be martyr, but he is not going to do the bay'ah in the hands of Yazid. And this is what Imam Hussein does. And when the news of the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil comes, what does Imam Hussein do, my dear brothers and sisters? Imam Hussein calls the daughter of Muslim. Imam Hussein calls the daughter of Muslim ibn Aqil, and he calls her and hugs her and he cares for her and he kisses her and then offers her earring and offers her some new clothes. When the daughter realizes that there is some special treatment that is being met by her uncle, she says, "Oh my dear uncle, you are specially treating me today. What has happened to my father? Have I become an orphan? Oh my uncle, please tell me. If I have become an orphan, then I would start mourning the death of my father." Imam Hussein says, "Oh my dear daughter, you have to be patient. You have to be calm. Yes, my beloved brother, Muslim ibn Aqil was mercilessly killed in the city of Kufa. I would say to the daughter of Muslim, oh daughter of Muslim, it is only matter of time. You would know how the enemies of Islam would treat the orphans. When Hazrat Sakina becomes an orphan on the day of Ashura, there was nobody to console her. There was no one to offer her water. The enemies of Islam, they were slapping Sakina and they were tearing off her earrings from her ear, and Sakina, her clothes were on fire, and Sakina Sakina was looking towards Furat and calling her uncle. Oh Abbas, I have become an orphan, but nobody is coming to my aid. سَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He, with this martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada and the blood of these martyrs, make us such that we are not arrogant, but rather we would pay and serve only and only Allah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us becoming better Muslims and better Mu'mins. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our age and makes us the true followers of our Imam when the Imam arrives. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to maintain the dignity of Muslims wherever they are. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure those who are sick in our communities. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive those who have passed away from our communities and those whom He has forgiven, to elevate their station so that they could be in the company of Ahlul Bayt. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for all the marhumeen of those who are attending tonight's program. Ya Hussein.